What's up Kitemana fans, welcome to this new video. In today's video we're gonna do something that we did previously but with two different kites. So in the previous comparison video we compared the Nord Orbit against the Cabrina Nitro. Video is up here. And now we're gonna do it with different kites. This time we have the Reedin Supermodel HTF against the new Pivot Season 28. So why do we compare these two kites? Pivot is a long-term popular kite in the kite scene for a couple of years. And with the new Reedin Supermodel, which just came out a couple of years ago and gaining popularity as well, people always think that they are the same in looks and in construction, but they are not. They are meant to use in the same conditions and the same disciplines, but one kite may suit you better than the other one. So that's what we're trying to find out and give you the best possible advice. So let's go.
Kitemana, your online kite store.
So what we first do, we lay the kites on the ground and pump them up and see the visual differences and the overall construction differences. And after that, we weigh the kites as well to see if there's any difference in weight. So the first thing that we noticed was the differences in canopy. The Pivot has D4 canopy and the Supermodel HTF has D3 canopy. The other more noticeable difference was the difference between the use of Dacron on both of the kites. The Pivot has less Dacron and the Supermodel has more use of Dacron. So the Pivot has one type of Dacron all over the leading edge and less usage of Dacron on the canopy. So the Supermodel HTF has a hybrid torsion frame, which means that the leading edge has different thicknesses of Dacron, which means that the one is lighter than the other one. Besides that, the kites are still the same in terms of struts and bridles. They both have pulley bridles, which means the kite has good D-power and controllable in higher and lower wind speeds. And tree struts means that they also are light, but still stable in the air. So because of the different usage of Dacron and canopy on both of the kites, we were very curious to find out which kite was lighter or heavier. So we compared the weight of the Supermodel HTF and the Pivot in size 12 meter. And we came out that both of the kites were 3.7 kilos, which was unexpected, but they're the same weight. So that will also be interesting while testing it on the water. So a good thing to know is that a lighter kite is always better because it will perform better in high wind speeds and also in low wind speeds because the kite will shoot up higher and take you up easier. Also, it will stay much more in the side of the wind window, which means that it's much more controllable in high wind speed conditions. So we took out both of the 9 meters of the Supermodel and the Pivot, and the wind was a little bit light, but still 20 to 22 knots, I think. And it was also good to see how these kites will perform in lighter wind speeds. And this is what I think. So first off, the bar pressure on both of the kites, the Pivot and the Supermodel, the bar pressure is light and you don't have a lot of steering pressure as well, which means the kite is very forgiving. So a very minor difference in steering pressure is that the Pivot has a little bit more steering pressure and therefore the kite feels a little bit quicker, also because of its compact shape. So after the bar pressure, we come up to the turning speed and the climbing speed of both of the kites. I felt that the HTF felt a little bit slower, but it climbs up faster. And the Pivot has a quicker turning ratio, but climbs up a little bit slower. So they're around the same, but in terms of climbing speed, the HTF is faster than the Pivot. A little side note for you guys is that the differences that we mentioned are very tiny and not that big when comparing other kites to each other. Because the Pivot and the Supermodel are so close to each other, the differences are smaller than normal. So take in mind that the differences are a little bit more zoomed in than normally. So after the turning speed, we come up to kite loops. And in terms of kite loops, the wind was 20 to 22 knots, so not a lot of wind to pull crazy mega loops or something. But I can imagine that in the higher wind speeds, the Pivot will give you a little bit more an aggressive loop than the HTF does. But on the other side, the HTF will take your confidence a little bit higher in higher wind speeds because the pull of the loop is not that big, so we will be more confident when kite looping the HTF in higher wind speeds. But also in lower winds because the HTF climbs up quicker than the Pivot in low winds as well. After that, we go to the jumps and the hang time of both of the kites. They're about the same, so no big differences to mention to you guys. So both of the kites shoot you up perfectly up in the sky and have a good amount of hang time and put you nice and soft back on the ground again. Of course, not as good as a 5-strut kite in comparison to a 3-strut, so perfectly fine and no extra things to be mentioned to you guys. So in terms of forgiveness, both of the kites are very forgiving and perfectly suitable for beginner riders, but also advanced riders, of course. Yeah, both of the kites, they do not punish you that fast if you make a mistake. The Pivot does have a little bit more steering pressure and will feel a little bit more direct, and the HTF will have a little bit less bar pressure and will punish you even less if you make a mistake or pull on the wrong side of the bar. So to sum up, the kites are practically the same. There are not big differences and only some minor differences, which means the kites are both perfectly fine for all-round free riding. So hopefully we made your decision easier by explaining the differences about the Pivot and the Supermodel HTF. We both have the kites on stock, of course, so check them out in the description below. And if you have any questions about the Pivot or the Supermodel, don't hesitate, contact us and we'll see you at the shop and maybe in the next video. Ciao!